The Galactic Summit was in full swing, a grand assembly of species from across the stars. Representatives from 100 worlds had gathered in the shimmering halls of the orbital nexus, a massive space station orbiting a neutral star system. The air was thick with the hum of translators, the clinking of ceremonial goblets, and the occasional hiss of a diplomatic spat being smoothed over by mediators. But all eyes were on the center of the room, where the alien queen of the Zynthari dominion sat on her crystalline throne. The Zynthari were a mysterious species, their biology unlike anything else in the galaxy. Their queen, a towering figure with iridescent scales and 6 glowing eyes, exuded an aura of power and regality. Her presence alone commanded silence, and her demands were absolute. The Zynthari Dominion was a formidable force, and their queen had made it clear that she would accept nothing less than perfection in her dealings with other species. The representatives had come bearing gifts, each hoping to curry favor with the queen and secure an alliance with her empire. The Krellians presented a massive gemstone mine from the heart of a dying star, its facets refracting light in mesmerizing patterns. The queen glanced at it, her expression unreadable, and waved it away with a flick of her clawed hand. The Vossarians offered a living sculpture, a creature genetically engineered to shift its form into intricate designs. It writhed and danced before the queen, but she merely tilted her head, unimpressed. Next, she hissed, her voice echoing through the chamber. One by one, the gifts were presented and dismissed. The queen's patience was wearing thin, her 6 eyes narrowing as she surveyed the room. "Is this all the galaxy has to offer?" she demanded, her voice dripping with disdain. "Trinkets and baubles? I expected more from those who seek the favor of the Zynthari Dominion." The representatives exchanged uneasy glances. No one had anticipated this level of scrutiny. The queen's standards were impossibly high, and it seemed that nothing would satisfy her. Then, a human stepped forward. Captain Elias Grant of the United Earth Federation was not a diplomat by trade. He was a soldier, a man who had spent most of his life on the front lines of humanity's conflicts. But when the call had gone out for someone to represent Earth at the summit, he had volunteered. Humanity was new to the galactic stage, and they needed every advantage they could get. Grant was not what anyone expected. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a face that had seen too much war and too little sleep. His uniform was simple, devoid of the ornate decorations favored by other species. In his hands, he carried a small, unassuming box. The queen's eyes locked onto him as he approached. "And what does the human offer?" she asked, her tone laced with skepticism. Grant opened the box, revealing a simple object, a book. It was an old, leather-bound volume, its pages yellowed with age. "This," he said, "is a collection of stories from my world. Stories of courage, sacrifice, and the indomitable spirit of humanity." The queen stared at the book, her expression unreadable. "Words on paper," she said slowly. "You offer me words?" Grant met her gaze without flinching. "Words have power, Your Majesty. They can inspire, unite, and change the course of history. This book contains the essence of who we are as a species. It is a gift from our hearts." The queen was silent for a long moment, her 6 eyes studying Grant with an intensity that made even the most seasoned diplomat squirm. Then, to everyone's shock, she reached out and took the book from his hands. She flipped through the pages, her claws careful not to tear the delicate paper. Her expression remained inscrutable, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, curiosity, perhaps, or even respect. "This," she said at last, "is interesting, but it is not enough." Grant's heart sank. He had hoped the book would be enough to at least open a dialogue, but it seemed the queen was as unyielding as ever. He bowed his head, preparing to retreat, but the queen's voice stopped him. "I do not want her gifts," she said, her voice ringing through the chamber. "I want you." The room erupted into murmurs of confusion and disbelief. Grant looked up, his brow furrowed. "Me, your majesty?" "Yes," the queen said, her gaze unwavering. "You, Captain Elias Grant of the United Earth Federation. I have seen the strength of your species in your eyes. I have heard the stories of your kind's resilience and determination. I want a human to serve in my court, to be a bridge between our peoples. And I choose you." Grant was stunned. This was not what he had expected when he had volunteered for this mission. He glanced around the room, seeing the shocked faces of the other representatives. The Zynthari Queen's demand was unprecedented, and no one knew how to respond. But Grant was a soldier, and he knew how to make quick decisions. He straightened his shoulders and met the queen's gaze. "If it is your wish, your majesty, then I accept." The queen's lips curled into something that might have been a smile. "Good. You will serve me well, human. And perhaps, in time, you will teach me more about your species." The summit ended shortly after that, with the other representatives leaving in a state of bewilderment. The Zynthari Queen had turned down all their gifts and demanded a human instead. It was a decision that would be talked about for years to come. Months later, Grant adjusted the collar of his new uniform, a sleek black outfit adorned with the insignia of the Zynthari Dominion. It felt strange to wear the colors of an alien empire, but he had grown accustomed to it. Life in the Queen's court was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The Zynthari were a highly disciplined and hierarchical society, and the Queen's word was law. But Grant had found a place among them, serving as an advisor and liaison between the Dominion and humanity. The Queen had taken a keen interest in him, often summoning him to her private chambers to discuss Earth's history, culture, and philosophy. She was fascinated by humanity's capacity for both great kindness and terrible violence, and she seemed to relish their debates. One evening, as they sat in her chambers, the Queen turned to him with a question that had been on her mind for some time. "Tell me, Captain Grant," she said, "why do humans fight so fiercely for their freedom? Even when faced with overwhelming odds, they refuse to yield. What drives them?" Grant thought for a moment before answering. "It's because we believe that every individual has the right to determine their own destiny," he said. "We fight for our freedom because it is the most precious thing we have. Without it, life has no meaning." The Queen considered his words, her 6 eyes narrowing in thought. "And yet," she said, "your species is also capable of great cruelty. You have waged wars against each other, committed atrocities in the name of power and greed. How do you reconcile this?" Grant sighed. "We are not perfect, your majesty. We make mistakes, and we have done terrible things. But we also have the capacity to learn from our mistakes, to grow and change. That is what makes us human.